Town of Kennebunkport Planning Board. This is the June 15th meeting. First off, we'll do attendance. We have 3 members, which is a quorum here, plus Scott is available on Zoom. So, Scott, are you there? Okay, good. Okay, so we have more than a quorum, so we're in good shape. The first step is the approval of minutes. So, did everybody get the minutes that Trish sent?
Yep.
Yeah. No comments?
No comments?
No.
Wow,
No
that's
comment.
amazing. Okay, so, excuse me, I'll take a motion to approve them.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, so I'm in favor. Nina
In favor.
In favor.
and Scott? In favor. Okay. So the agenda for this evening brings us to item number 220501, 58 Langford Road, Peterson Design Group. And Eric Peterson is going to make a presentation. Oh, by the way, how many people other than Scott do we have on Zoom? 2 others. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Folk and Board. Before I get started, I'd like to, I discovered an error in the description on page 2 of our narrative that talks about the structure being smaller in area and volume. That's a mistake. So the numbers describe the actual proposal,
Uh-huh.
but the language is incorrect, so I've made a copy that I wonder if could be
Sure. Stuffed in the
swapped
books.
out.
Yeah. No problem.
I'll leave the rest to Warner. Okay, so this parcel at 58 Langford Road is a pretty small lot with a pretty small house on it currently. What we're proposing is to
You need to get closer to the mic.
Okay, we're proposing to replace the existing house with a new house that is less than 30% expansion of volume and area, and has a smaller amount of lot coverage than the current situation. Everyone see that?
Okay. So Werner, can you call this one up?
Yeah, it's still
So
trying to load.
Okay, so the existing house is closer to the seawall and closer to the abutting property
You
line.
need to get closer to the hole, take the mic out and just hold it, yeah. Just, no, pump that button.
Pull it out of the, yeah, just pull it out of the stand there.
Got it?
I'll get it.
I'll help you.
There you go.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we are proposing to construct the new house further landward from the seawall than the existing house is. And if you look on your site plan, you'll see the dotted line. We're also proposing to construct the new house further from the tight setback line on the north side of the house. We're proposing to cut back quite a bit of driveway. Right now there's a lot of driveway and hardscape with this house. There's a pipe stem aspect to this lot where the existing driveway comes in and then mushrooms out. We're taking away all of this area of hardscape. We also try to be thoughtful as far as the neighbors go. As far as sight lines, there are no view easements across this property, but we situated the house in a way that the lowest portion of the house is in the area where it could possibly block the view from a neighbor. The owners were thoughtful about that and wanted to preserve their neighbor's view as much as possible. So if you look at the numbers, you'll see that we are falling under the 30% expansion allowed for area and volume. We're proposing a 27.88% percent expansion of area and a 29.48% expansion of volume, with an overall reduction in lot coverage from 51.2% to 38.44%. We're also proposing to raise the house up so that it meets the new flood standards that are proposed. And of course, it meets the height restriction. Does anyone have any questions for me? Mr. Perlmutter will be pleased to know that the windows on the ocean side of this house will have screens on them, so
I would
you didn't
prefer
even have to
screens on
ask.
all of the windows, but I'm
Yeah.
very glad to hear that. And
Yeah.
also, it looks like you have an overhang.
we do have an overhang, and these are smaller windows on this house than some of the previous houses we've designed in the past, and a lot of double hung windows which can have full screens, so I think that you'll be happy with that.
They've taken away one of my questions.
Sorry.
So is there a deck all the way around?
There is a deck. There's a deck all the way around on 3 sides now. We're proposing a deck on 1 side.
Once.
Yeah, right now the deck wraps around 3 sides of the existing house. We're proposing a screened-in porch on the end and a deck on the ocean side, and just steps down to the ground on the landward side.
On the, trying to find a north arrow here, but,
Right here.
okay. On the northeast end,
Mhm.
what I see is, looks like a paved area. Is that in the existing or is that proposed?
There's an existing walkway on the current house that will go away. The only thing it's not paved, but the only thing that's hardscape on the north side of the house now would be a pathway from the bottom of the steps down from the deck to the dock.
I see, okay.
Yeah, right, you're right. On the current survey, you'll see there's like a brick walkway on that end, that goes away.
Okay. And is the rest of the ground grass
Grass
covered?
now,
Oh,
mhm.
grass covered.
Mhm.
And there's a seawall all the way around
It's
on the water line?
not exactly, pretty close. This is the seawall here, comes down here, and then it ends here. And this is shoreline, just in this part, or this little cove. We're not proposing to change that seawall at all. We just would be leaving it. It's in good shape.
Is this all in resource protection shoreline zone?
The whole parcel.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's-
Well, take that back. See this curved line? The whole parcel that's buildable, I should say. This pipe stem piece that comes in from the driveway is not. But from this point forward, the whole thing's in RP. Mhm. Very much like 2 Main Street was.
And it's lowland, basically.
It is low, and the house sits fairly low now, so that's one of the big benefits of this project, is to be able to get that house raised up to meet the flood, the proposed flood ordinance.
Well, that to me raises the issue of restricting any kind of pesticide use or heavy fertilizer use. Because very easy to wash that right into the water,
Mm.
even with a seawall.
Yep. Yeah, Falmouth has a real problem with that. If you look at, I volunteer for Friends of Casco Bay, and I know that that's one of the, if you look at aerial maps of the town landing area in Falmouth, where the pesticides and well, it's phosphorus mostly, goes into the ocean, and it's just green. Everything's green along the edge. There's like a big algae bloom on the rocks
Yes.
just off.
And you'll get red tides from that as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So the residents really need to restrict any kind of pesticide and heavy fertilizer use.
That's my personal, I'm a friend of Casco Bay, so we're a bayscaper. Myself personally, we don't use any pesticides. I have dogs too, so for that reason, we don't use fertilizer or pesticides, only compost and composted
Right,
manure.
compost goes in slowly, it's much better.
Yeah, it's organic.
You'll get a better lawn from it too.
We do the garbage to garden program where we collect our garbage scraps and leave them on the curb, and then they bring us back composted soil. It's a great program.
Okay, well, how high is this house?
It is going to be, you mean how high in total?
Total,
Just under 30 feet.
30 feet.
Yep.
That's pretty much the extent of my questions, which I started without you, so.
That's okay. I just want to note that Ed Francis has also come, so we have one more. We have five people attending this evening, so that's good. So we have been putting some comments on, we can't mandate that you don't use fertilizer, but we can suggest it rather heavily.
I understand that, and honestly, it's not my part. It's not my personal property, so I can pass along the request that the board prefers the abstinence from commercial pesticides and fertilizers. Is that about? I don't know how you'd phrase it.
Well, I think that's debatable because I think when you're within the shoreland zoning and the resource protection zoning, I think we can mandate that pesticide use be restricted and
Okay.
fertilizer use be restricted.
there'll be
because you're
something-
so close to water bodies.
Right, so we'll put that in the
Yeah.
finding of facts, so it's something they should be aware
I
of.
think you did the same thing on Wildwood, on 28 Wildwood with us, and I think you did the same thing on 2 Main Street.
Yeah, I believe so.
We have brochures on lawns for lobsters and so forth that give all those guidelines, and they're very good guidelines.
Okay.
So, something the owner should be aware of.
Yeah, happy to pass it along.
So Nina, you raise a good point. There is help me out, Warner. There's a town committee that's currently working on developing those guidelines.
The Conservation Commission.
The Conservation Commission. Do you sit in on that? Are you affiliated with that?
So, no, I don't sit in with the Conservation Commission, but I am aware that they've been working on a draft ordinance that has not been presented yet to the Board of Selectmen for their consideration as to whether or not they want to put it on the town warrant. But I know that they are working, on, a combination ordinance that addresses, pesticide and fertilizer use in town.
I know that they are referencing that lawns for lobsters, existing brochure material. They're also putting, at least in the current language, obviously under development, some limits, some specific, I think it's within 25 feet of the shore, they would prohibit pesticide use. They don't tie it to the RP zone, they don't tie it to the 75-foot
No, they don't.
setback. I'm uncomfortable with the planning board arbitrarily setting restrictions as a condition for pesticide use, just because the person is developing their property in a way that's consistent with the town ordinance right now. Doesn't seem fair that we do that for one and not for the neighbors. And I do like the idea of us distributing the material, though, that is currently being worked on by the Conservation Committee, with our recommendation that they adhere to it.
Yeah, I think ultimately one of the issues that I observed just in in some past applications is that, if the board is going to discuss putting any type of restriction that's going to find its way into a set of findings, it's, there needs to be that adequate conversation with the applicant during this process so that it doesn't come as a surprise.
It's education, really, right? I mean,
Right. I mean, what I think we had with a couple was there was just some surprise when it showed up in the findings, and, applicants said, oh, this wasn't part of, this wasn't part of the discussion, this wasn't part of our application, so, things of that nature. So I think if the board wants to have that discussion with the applicant to say, these are some of our concerns, and is the applicant okay with this type of, restriction, then, then I think that can be discussed between the boards. I think when it doesn't show up, when you don't have something that you're citing specifically, I think, that's difficult,
I think where I think we're at, my observation and the discussions that we've had is that the board is not of a single mind. So for you to say that the board would have this conversation with the applicant, I think that needs to be preceded by the board having an opinion.
Yep.
And not right now where we have individuals on the board that have opinions.
And just, one of the discussions that, will likely occur with Conservation Commission and the selectmen, regarding this is just, how do we roll this out? How does it get enforced? What are the practical implications of this? And that hasn't been discussed, that hasn't been fleshed out yet, and so, which is why I raised, the points, with previous applications, to put, very, direct limits on saying, well, you can't do this within 25, some of these things are, these are behaviors, that regulations are attempting to police, and that is much different than saying, yes, we issue a building permit based on an approved set of plans and a site plan, and we have something that we can physically inspect and see.
Well, the draft Conservation Committee materials take care of that policing. They assign that to the code enforcement.
Yes,
Just
I'm aware.
FYI.
And
But to your point, I think we cannot make specific recommendations like the Conservation Commission has put out, like 25 feet and so forth,
Yeah.
because that hasn't been discussed, it hasn't been put. However, we can put restrictions on because we're authorized under 1010B1, right there. When the proposed development will be located in the shoreland zone or resource protection zone, the planning board shall approve it with conditions if it makes a positive finding based on information presented that the proposed use will maintain safe and healthful conditions, will not result in water pollution, erosion, or sedimentation to surface waters. And I think that gives us the authority right there in the shoreland and resource protection zones to say that pesticides are restricted if you're right up against the water body.
I just don't know what restriction we would apply and what reference we would refer to, saying that it was something that was going to benefit the water.
Could it
Well,
be a
that's something
could it be a
that you have to-
I
recommendation?
think it certainly could be a recommendation, and I'd like to provide the materials by leveraging what the Conservation Committee has already done. But I don't think that we're in a position to step out and say we know more than the Conservation Committee does in terms of what specific restrictions should be applied.
I think we could know just as much if we sat down and discussed it out and looked at what it takes to keep water safe from high phosphorus runoff and from pesticides running into the water. This is extremely important because you've got it right near fisheries, basically. You've got fishing boats, going right out from there, and lobstering boats going right out from Cape Porpoise. And here you are abutting right to basically the dock area. And you don't want pesticides and fertilizers running off there. You will get algal blooms, I can guarantee it. I've worked in water resources for a long time.
I don't know what to add. I think I've said my piece here.
I thought we had come up with what we agreed on
Alas,
the last set of findings of fact, so.
But it's only a guideline, it's not a
Yes,
restriction. And
correct.
my opinion is that we can make restrictions under these under these ordinances, we can make actual restrictions.
I understand your position. I'm not of the same mind,
I
is all
know.
I'm saying. So I don't know why we're going back and forth on it.
Okay.
I agree that it's important, and again, I would like to grab onto the coattails of the Conservation Commission. I suggested a few weeks ago, and then I backed away from the thought that we would actually leverage New Hampshire law. There was some disdain for following our neighboring state, which is fine. But
I'm not-
until we're able to reference something that's been well thought through and vetted with the public, I think that we're going to be left to making a recommendation.
I am not of the mind to just suddenly adopt either a New Hampshire or.
I understand. I'm
Wait
not
a minute,
arguing for
wait
it,
a
Nina.
minute. I'm not of a mind to adopt either a New Hampshire or a Maine law when we don't know the background behind it and we don't know on what basis they made those decisions. I think you need to make those decisions for yourself.
Well, based on something that you do know.
Yes. I think this committee, this planning board should be getting together with the Conservation Commission and be talking these things through. It would make a better recommendation to go before the Board of Selectmen for the Conservation Commission. And I've talked to Steve Hanna about this, who's on the Conservation, and I think they're very willing to do that. It would take a meeting for us to sit down with them.
Have they reached out to you, Tom?
No,
Not yet, no.
but my vice chairman.
Yes, they've reached out to the vice chair.
Could I offer that for this application, a common denominator might be to have the recommendation of the pesticide and fertilizer
Yes,
abstinence with the educational material as well?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that's fine. The one thing, Werner, that comes up is, you mentioned the ultimate thing of the Board of Selectmen is going to adopt it and hand it to us and have a public hearing on this thing that we've never seen. And we already bitched at the last, we can't have that again. We need to be involved with whatever they're doing.
Right, so at this point, commission is working through, I think they've worked through numerous drafts at this point, of the ordinance, that they are looking to propose, so when it's at some point, they'll bring that forward to the Board of Selectmen, so I think once you have kind of a better sort of, fleshed out version, then the Board of Selectmen can then consider as to whether or not they want to, have that placed on the warrant. Now, that may not necessarily be the final version, at that point. And there's nothing that prohibits the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission having a joint workshop, to talk about, the subject matter. There's nothing that, I think that's
an important thing we
yeah,
need
I think
to
that's a
do.
fine idea if the boards,
And,
if the boards want to do that. I would suggest, one is that, communicate that to the town manager, and, we can coordinate that then in terms of trying to set up some type of a meeting. But it should go through, that communication should go through, Lori.
I'll send a note to Lori when I get home.
Yep, and then we can work on figuring out, what the schedule, would look like for that.
Good.
So, but I think it's important, one, like, these are important topics to talk about. It should be done outside of the context of a particular application, so
Yes.
that, because you're talking about, a town-wide issue, you all see applications and you have concerns with applications, and you have a commission that's working on an ordinance that potentially affects those types of these types of applications. So it's important, I think, to see, for you all to see then what's what they've put together in terms of ordinance that they believe will pass through the residents. So, but because ultimately, that's what that's what has to happen. An ordinance has to go forward, has to be voted. One, the Board of Selectmen have to agree to put it in front of the voters. They don't have to agree with, the ordinance itself, but they are the ones that have to agree to put it on the warrant,
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then ultimately, the voters decide whether or not they want to be regulated in that fashion.
Yeah.
So,
And if we have seen it before that, they do that, that would be a
Sure,
wonderful,
yeah.
wonderful first step.
yeah, no, I don't disagree at all. So, yeah, so
Yeah.
let's start with that, let's start with that, that email communication, and then that just helps us then to try to coordinate,
Sure.
and
Yeah,
get some
'cause,
kind
I
of a
mean,
joint,
it's-
a workshop set up.
It's a
so.
workshop set up, it still has to officially be a public meeting
Still gotta-
because of us.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Yep. Yep. Everybody shows up in this room and, gets a chance to chat it out, so.
Good. All right. So, how are we doing on, just otherwise on 35, or 58 Langsford Road? You have any,
I think Scott might have a question or comment. Scott?
no, Scott, yeah? You?
Can you hear? Okay, I guess he's okay.
Not very loud.
Okay, so you have no comment?
He's all set.
Okay, he's all set now.
Okay.
Well, I just so I'm taking a look at the drawings for your house, so you have some drawings labeled as-built elevation. So
Yep.
is this the existing?
That's what's there now,
This
that's
is
right.
This is what's there, and so then you're gonna replace it with this schematic with the following one.
Correct.
All right.
That's presumably where he gets the volume before and after and such.
Correct.
Okay,
So, was it clear, because you said you're gonna remove some
get
hardscape.
closer to your mic.
Sorry, so you said you're gonna remove some hardscape.
That's right.
So, how much hardscape are you removing?
About 800 square feet.
Okay, great. And that's just gonna be grass?
It was mostly driveway and walkways before, so now it'll just be, yes, planted green, yep.
Nice, great. That's it.
Any questions on this?
I have a couple of questions. Let me first apologize for being late. I can only blame it on traffic. I just drove up from Boston. I was there for the day. Maybe it's a question for Werner. Can you help me understand why the entire lot is RP?
So let me pull up the survey.
I can answer that. This curved arc is the 75-foot setback from the high
Yeah.
water mark.
Understood?
So everything within that 75-foot is in that RP band.
That doesn't sound right.
Well, so your
It's
RP,
the 75-foot setback because it's in the shoreland zone.
right, your RP designation would be if it's located within the current coastal floodplain. That puts it in an RP designation, which I think based off of, what we see on the survey from Lower Village, gives you that indication. It shows the line, the distinct line between your V zone and your AE zone.
So you
And I
it
think
really
you have
has
some-
to do with the floodplain and not with, wildlife grasses or
Correct,
some
yes.
of the other.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the lot itself, I mean, as Eric has noted, is a fully developed lot.
Yeah.
And its RP, its RP designation is by its presence in in the floodplain, which is based off of elevation.
And we're
Thank
proposing
you.
to raise the house so that it meets
Yeah, I
the new
heard that
flood
part, so-
elevation.
So it'll be there, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Any restrictions being added to the neighbors' views of the water?
I did cover that a little bit. What we tried to do is keep the portion of the house that's closest to the neighbor's view corridor is the low part. It's the one-story section that is a screen porch with a balcony on the top.
So you're cognizant of it, you're being transparent about,
The owner of this property, one of the first things he said was when we do this house, he wants to not block his neighbor's view as much as possible, so.
okay, thank you. And Have you looked, did you take a minute to go through the application page that you filled out? I don't have it with me, but I had one
Oh,
question.
I had a typographical error in there that said that the building was not going to be expanded in area or volume.
I did see that.
And that was an error on my part. I actually passed out a supplement. You have that somewhere?
Yeah. Mark, did you grab those? Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you were clear on the numbers, what the expansions were and all, so that was clearly, yeah, a typo. My question was, when you say two-thirds down the page, it looks for the interior square footage, existing and proposed, and you added to be the exterior and interior square footage, and I didn't understand what you were conveying by that.
So when we calculate,
Is it under the deck? Is it the deck area? Is that
deck
what-
counts
is
as
that what you mean?
expansion of area but not volume.
Yes.
Yes, so,
But that's why you annotated it.
exactly, because
Oh,
it's not clear that, it assumes there's no exterior space.
It's just the wording, yeah.
Yeah,
There wasn't a
so-
way to,
That's right,
just
so
wanted to be clear what.
I think we both, you understand that it's a combination of interior and exterior space aggregated together give us the number that is the area
I know
expansion
there's a
number.
reason. I know this
Yep.
is one of the reasons people have to hire a good architect to work with them,
To understand
do
the
these
math
houses.
and the,
There's a lot of detail
Yeah.
involved and rightfully so, so, no, thanks for the clarification.
Sure.
That's all I was after, and that's all I had.
Okay.
Thank
So, any other comments at this point? Ready to take a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the application.
Second? Okay, I'll go through. Obviously, Nina,
Approve.
Tom approves,
Yes.
and Scott?
We're proving
to go on to the public
You're
hearing.
declaring it complete.
We're declaring it
complete. Thank you.
Complete.
Declaring it complete.
I'll take the approval if you want to hand it to me.
No,
It sounded too
I don't
easy.
think we can do that.
no, we probably have
Thanks
to
anyway.
wait 2 weeks for that.
Yeah.
Huh.
Okay, so we'll see you in 2 weeks for the public hearing?
That's correct.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Right.
Oh,
That
3
would
weeks.
be the, yeah.
So
Okay.
what is
Yeah.
that?
First and third Wednesdays
Yeah,
of the
right, so
month.
it's the, yeah, so there's an extra
That's correct. That
Wednesday
would
in
be
There's an extra
the,
Wednesday in there, that's
that
right.
would be the 6th of
I'll
July.
nail it down.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Eric. The,
Can I just, is my recollection wrong? We've skipped the 4th of July week meeting on some other years. Is there any plan to do that this year? Or do I, maybe I'm recalling that wrong?
No, I think you might be right.
you might be right.
Oh, I love
You,
your-
you all have in the past chosen, a summer meeting to not meet.
I'm going to be here. I don't have a dog in this fight, but just,
I'll be here if people
I'll
want
be
to.
around, so.
Typically helps if we don't have any applications in the queue.
we do,
But-
but it's a public hearing. I didn't know if there'd be any pushback that it was at a bad time.
Yeah. Do we have any other
Maybe it's a
applications?
good time.
Scott?
Everybody from Langsford
Oh, we
Road
do.
will be here.
I just got one today.
You know, we'll be in
Is it-
town.
Do
Yep.
in July, or is it?
It was gonna be July 6th, I was gonna chat with you about it to make sure that, and
Yep.
see if everybody was available, but we are looking to put it on for July 6th.
Are we okay with it?
It's okay with me.
It's okay with me, I guess.
Werner, you all right?
Sure.
Okay. I'm sorry, April. April, you're good?
Good.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, so we'll see you on July 6th.
Yes, I think I've got another one incoming, so
Yes.
maybe,
Hopefully,
I'll be
we will be
emailing you
once
tomorrow to
again
remind
in
you.
person.
once again in person, yes.
That's the hope, yes.
Thanks, Eric.
Okay, now all I need is a volunteer to be a case manager on this little cutie. And you two can't volunteer. You've been volunteering for everything.
I
So
don't think Scott can hear anybody.
I'll do it. What the hell? I haven't done one in a long time. So make me the case manager. So that brings us to item number 2, which is item 220401, Noonan's Lobster Hut. Richard, Keith, and Terry Noonan sent it in as a site plan review. This is the finding of facts for the outside seating of 32 customers. So, Larry, would you care to read this little cutie?
Okay, so this is,
Could you get closer to your mic, Larry?
oh, sorry, so, Kennebunkport Planning Board finding of fact and decision, application of Noonan's Lobster Hut to add outside restaurant seating. Following a site plan review pursuant to the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance, the March 3rd, 2020 revision on May 18th, 2022, and a public hearing held on June 1st, 2022, the Kennebunkport Planning Board makes the following findings of fact and conclusions and renders the following decision. Findings of fact are as follows. Owners of record are Richard and Keith Noonan with respective mailing addresses of 11 and 50 Mills Road, Kennebunkport, Maine 04046. Owners represent themselves as applicants on behalf of Noonan's Lobster Hut Incorporated. 3, the property has a street address of 11 Mills Road, Kennebunkport, Maine 04046, and is identified as map 22, block 7, lot 28 on the municipal tax assessor's maps. 4, the property is a conditional use restaurant in the Cape Porpoise Square zone. The property is also located in the resource protection and shoreland zones, though the portion of the property proposed for outside seating is only in the shoreland zone. 5, owners have demonstrated a legal interest in the property by providing a quitclaim deed with covenant recorded in the York County Registry of Deeds, Book 7650, pages 141 to 142, dated December 7, 1995. 6, the property consists of 2.2 acres, more or less, for a family restaurant. 7, the area and volumetric descriptions of the existing buildings and adjacent impervious, in parentheses, parking areas are as follows. The interior area shows no increase. The interior volume shows no increase. The exterior footprint shows no increase. The impervious area coverage shows no increase. So no changes are proposed for existing sizes of any interior, exterior, impervious areas or volumes. The lot coverage is 17.72%, which is less than 20% allowed for Cape Porpoise Square. 8, in an application dated April 13th, 2022, and updated on June 6, 2022, applicant proposes conversion of a portion of the existing asphalt-covered parking area to support outside dining on 8 picnic tables for a total of 32 customers, 4 per picnic table. This would supplement existing inside dining for 84 customers. Total customer usage, therefore, will increase to 116 persons. Since off-street parking requirements are 1 space for every 3 customers, the total number of off-street parking spaces required is 39. Applicant stated that 46 parking spaces remain after conversion of the portion of the parking area to dining service. 9, the proposed permanent conversion is supported by 2 years of temporary service in this use during the recent COVID restrictions on interior dining. 10, utilities for the restaurant will not be impacted by proposed increase in potential customer use. 11, modifications to parking arrangements in support of outside dining will include appropriate barriers to separate the dining area from traffic on Mills Road. 12, the applicant has requested no submission or performance waivers from the requirements of the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance. 13, pursuant to the requirements of Article 1010A of the Land Use Ordinance, Guidelines for Decision, The planning board shall approve a site plan application unless it makes a negative ruling on one or more of the following identified findings which would otherwise compel denial. A, the proposed use meets the definition or specific requirements set forth in the land use ordinance and will be in compliance with the applicable state or federal laws, finding yes. B, the proposed use will not create fire safety hazards and will provide adequate access to the site or to the buildings on the site for emergency vehicles, finding yes. C, the proposed exterior lighting will not create hazards to motorists traveling on adjacent public streets and is adequate for the safety of occupants or users of the site and will not damage the value and diminish the usability of adjacent properties, finding yes. D, the provisions for buffers and on-site landscaping provide for adequate protection to neighboring properties from detrimental features of the development, finding yes. Comment, addition of appropriate safety barriers between Mills Road and the outside dining area will provide adequate protection of diners. E, the proposed use will not have a significant detrimental effect on the use and peaceful enjoyment of abutting property as a result of noise, vibration, fumes, odor, dust, glare, or other cause, finding yes. F, the provisions for vehicular loading and unloading and parking and for vehicular and pedestrian circulation on the site and onto adjacent public streets will not create hazards to safety, finding yes. Comment, the remaining parking area is sufficient for land use ordinance requirements. G, the proposed use will not have a significant detrimental effect on the value of adjacent properties, nor has a significant detrimental effect which could be avoided by reasonable modification of the plan, finding yes. H, the decision of the site will not result in significant flood hazards or flood damage and is in conformance with applicable flood hazard protection requirements, finding yes. I, adequate provision has been made for disposal of wastewater or solid waste and for the prevention of ground or surface water contamination, finding yes. J, adequate provision has been made to control erosion or sedimentation, finding yes. K, adequate provision has been made to handle stormwater runoff or other drainage problems on the site, finding yes. L, the proposed water supply will meet demands of the proposed use or for fire protection purposes, finding yes. M, adequate provision has been made for the transportation, storage, and disposal of hazardous substances and materials as defined by state law, finding not applicable. N, the proposed use will not have an adverse impact on significant scenic vistas or on significant wildlife habitat, nor will have such an impact that could be avoided by reasonable modification of the plan, finding yes. O, the proposed use will not cause unreasonable highway or public road congestion, finding yes. P, existing off-site ways and traffic facilities can safely and conveniently accommodate the increased traffic generated by the development as far away from the development as the effects of the development can be traced with reasonable accuracy, finding yes. Comment, vehicle access and adequate vehicle parking is unchanged from existing arrangements. 14, when a proposed development will be located within the shoreline or resource protection zones, in addition to the requirements of the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance, Article 10, the townwide regulations, Article 6, in Article 6, the performance standards for specific activities and land uses in Article 7, approval of the development will also require that the board makes positive findings based on the information presented that the proposed use, A, will maintain safe and healthful conditions, finding yes. B, will not result in water pollution, erosion, or sedimentation to surface waters, finding yes. C, will adequately provide for the disposal of all wastewater, finding yes. D, will not have an adverse effect or an impact on spawning grounds, fish, aquatic life, bird, or other wildlife habitat, finding yes. E, will conserve shore cover and visual as well as actual points of access to inland and coastal waters, finding yes. F, will protect archaeological and historic resources as designated in the comprehensive plan, finding not applicable. G, will avoid problems associated with floodplain development and use, finding yes. H, is in conformance with the performance standards set forth in section 5.6 in erosion and sedimentation control of the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance, finding yes. Any negative finding by the board means the application has been denied. 15, the application is otherwise complete. Conclusions. Article 1010A of the Land Use Ordinance mandates that the planning board shall approve a site plan application unless it makes one or more identified findings that would otherwise compel denial, and as noted above, the board makes no such finding. Decision, site plan application above is hereby approved. Conditions of approval, if any, pursuant to Article 1011 and 1012E. 1. Applicant pursuant to 1012E shall notify the planning board prior to the transfer of rights to construct an approved project. 2. Provisions along Mills Road for safety of diners shall be constructed to the satisfaction of both fire chief and police chief. 3. Applicant must record a copy of this decision and provide proof of such recordation in the form of a copy thereof attested by the Registrar of Deeds before any permits may issue or before any construction activities may commence. 4. Applicant shall comply with all terms and conditions of the town of Kennebunkport dated June 15, 2022.
Okay. So I'm going to move that we approve that finding of facts.
I'll second that.
Okay. Well, so I'm in favor. Nina?
In favor.
In favor?
Ed?
Yes, in favor.
And Scott? Okay, so we're going to sign it here. So is the 4 signatures okay? Scott can,
Yeah, that's
you
fine.
don't have to come in and sign it.
No.
That's okay.
Yep.
So
As long
we're
as we
just going to sign it here. And I guess I will take another motion as long as we're busy signing.
Oh, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Can you read this? It's a very quick message, but, okay. When it